The night had a way of revealing truths that daylight carefully concealed. Shadows stretched long across empty streets, whispering secrets to anyone who dared to listen. In the dim glow of a lantern, a figure moved quietly, his hands folded in front of him, his gaze seemingly serene. He wore the mask of virtue, a calm exterior, a deliberate kindness that drew people close. And yet, behind that carefully constructed facade, a storm of calculation churned, hidden beneath the gentle curve of his smile. Human beings, Machiavelli once warned, are more inclined to judge by appearances than by reality. The world rewards the courteous, the trustworthy, the generous, but those very traits can become weapons both for and against you. A man who bends too far toward goodness exposes the vulnerabilities that others can exploit. The mask he wears, polished and sincere, becomes a target for those who see the weakness behind the artifice, and most fail to notice until it is too late. In the quiet corners of the city, he observed those who praised his integrity. Friends, acquaintances, lovers. They all saw what they wanted to see. A man of unwavering principle. Yet with each compliment, each expression of admiration, the weight of the mask grew heavier. Kindness demanded repayment. Trust invited betrayal. The mask intended to protect began to cage him, and slowly he felt the edges of his carefully maintained world start to crack. There was power in appearing virtuous. People confided in him, shared their secrets, sought his guidance. They leaned on him, unknowingly feeding a network of influence that grew silently, invisibly, like roots beneath a garden floor. And as they trusted, they also revealed. Every whispered doubt, every hidden desire, every fleeting thought of rebellion became known, captured by the subtle intelligence of observation. Virtue had its cost, and that cost was far higher than anyone imagined. He paused at a crossroads, the lantern swinging, casting trembling shadows along the walls. Somewhere nearby, a figure watched from the darkness, curiosity edged with intent. The mask he wore would soon be tested, and what had seemed an unbreakable armor might turn into the very thing that exposed him. The city, silent and patient, waited for the first crack in the mask to appear. And when it did, the consequences would ripple far beyond the immediate, touching every hidden corner, every unspoken secret. As he walked on, the understanding settled deep in his chest. Goodness is not merely a gift, it is a danger. And for those who wield it without caution, the line between savior and victim is thinner than one could ever perceive. Somewhere in the shadows, another truth waited to unfold, one that would reveal not just betrayal, but the twisted power of those who know how to exploit it. And so the night deepened, carrying him forward, toward whispers in the shadows where the first real tests of trust and of human weakness would emerge. The lanterns flickered like dying eyes, casting uncertain light along the narrow alleyways. The figure from the previous night had vanished, but the echoes of his presence lingered. In these silent corridors, secrets traveled faster than footsteps. Whispers carried on the wind, brushing past walls and doors, twisting through the cracks in human hearts. It was here, in the unlit corners, that the true cost of goodness began to reveal itself. Those who wear virtue as a mask often do not realize how exposed they become. The very trust they offer freely becomes a beacon, drawing eyes that are hungry for weakness. Machiavelli's words returned. Men are quick to betray what they claim to honor, and faster still to manipulate what they desire. A friend's compliment is not always genuine. A lover's embrace may conceal silent schemes. In these shadows, every word, every glance becomes a weapon in the hands of those who recognize vulnerability. The man walked cautiously, ears straining for the subtlest sound, a footstep behind him, a muted cough, the soft rustle of fabric. He knew that danger was rarely loud. It arrived in whispers, in subtle insinuations, in promises made too softly to question. Each whispered word in the darkness revealed another layer of human weakness: envy, greed, obsession. Each secret shared, each confidence bestowed, was a thread in the intricate web of manipulation slowly ensnaring him. A voice called from behind a doorway, low and familiar. "I trust you," it said. The words were warm, persuasive, but the tone carried an edge he could not ignore. He paused, the lantern's flame trembling in his grasp. Trust, he realized, is a fragile currency, one that can be spent or stolen with devastating efficiency. The speaker stepped forward, eyes glinting in the dim light, and for a moment, the mask he wore felt heavy, suffocating. People believe that betrayal is sudden, explosive, a lightning strike in a calm sky. But in reality, it is slow, patient, a careful erosion of faith. Machiavelli observed it centuries ago. The human mind is malleable, and kindness often shapes it into a tool for deception. The more one gives, the more others will extract, until virtue itself becomes the very mechanism of downfall. And in the alleys, where shadows swallowed the timid and bold alike, this principle was as real as the cold stone beneath his feet. As he moved deeper, he sensed the invisible currents of influence, alliances forming silently, rivalries igniting in unnoticed gestures. Every glance exchanged between strangers could carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken intentions. And among these currents, he began to see the truth. Goodness alone offers no protection. Only awareness, cunning, and the careful observation of human nature could shield one from the subtle knives that lurked in every whispered conversation. By the time he reached the square, the night had grown heavier, thick with secrets that refused to dissipate. From the darkness, a figure emerged, familiar yet enigmatic, bearing another fragment of truth, an uncomfortable revelation about trust, loyalty, and the ease with which one can be betrayed. The stage was set for something far more dangerous, a confrontation that would expose not just deception, but the intricate and terrifying ways people exploit the goodwill of others. And as the whispers faded into silence, the realization settled. Every act of kindness invites scrutiny. Every gesture of virtue may be repurposed as a weapon, and every human relationship hides shadows that will inevitably emerge. Ahead lay the deeper peril, the poison of obsession, where desire and morality collide in ways that no one could anticipate. The square lay silent, bathed in the faint glow of a pale moon. The whispers of the alleys still clung to the walls, lingering like the residue of secrets too potent to vanish. In the stillness, he felt the first tremors of another danger, one far more intimate, far more insidious than betrayal: obsession. For kindness may invite envy, virtue may attract deceit, but desire, when unbalanced, devours both the heart and the mind. Obsessions begin quietly. A glance lingers longer than it should. A thought refuses to leave the mind. Machiavelli understood that human nature is drawn irresistibly toward fixation, that curiosity, fascination, and desire can twist into compulsion. One moment, a man seeks connection. The next, he is imprisoned by it. And in that prison, morality begins to bend, virtue becomes malleable, and the lines between right and wrong blur. He noticed her then, a figure at the edge of the square, partially hidden in shadow. Eyes locked, a silent exchange that neither needed to voice, yet both understood. She was no threat yet, only an enigma. But obsession, he knew, does not announce itself with fanfare. It creeps in through attention, through subtle influence, until the mind can no longer discern reality from desire. Every movement, every smile, every whispered word begins to carve grooves in thought, until the object of fascination dominates every waking consideration. It is in obsession that kindness becomes weaponized. A man may perform acts of generosity not from empathy, but from the need to be acknowledged, to bind another to himself, to ensure that attention never strays. And those who respond unsuspecting often reinforce the chains, unaware that their gratitude feeds the fire. Obsession does not merely corrupt the individual, it creates a network of psychological leverage, subtle yet unyielding. Machiavelli's shadow loomed over this truth. Human weakness is not always revealed by conflict or deceit. Often it is disclosed through fixation, through the relentless pursuit of connection that ignores consequence. The obsessed are blind architects of their own torment, and those who fall under their gaze are unwitting participants in a dangerous game. The delicate balance of trust, desire, and control begins to tilt, and the world seems smaller, constricted, as though reality itself bends around the compulsions of the heart. The moon shifted, light spilling across cobblestones, revealing footprints that had been unnoticed. He followed them instinctively, sensing the faint pulse of obsession in the rhythm of movement, the weight of intention in the air. Somewhere ahead, the consequences waited, patiently, like a predator lying in the grass. And he knew that these consequences were inevitable. Obsession transforms virtue into vulnerability, and vulnerability into a weapon that others wield without mercy. As he paused at the entrance to a narrow street, he realized the danger was not in the object of desire, but in the mind itself. The mind that refuses to release, that calculates every smile, every gesture, every word, until morality and reason are enslaved. Ahead lay another revelation, one even darker. Guilt, that silent tormentor, waiting to twist every choice, every act, and turn the good intentions of men into instruments of destruction. The night air hung heavy, thick with the scent of rain-soaked streets and distant smoke. Obsession, as he had come to understand, was only the first step. Its shadow extended into another, more suffocating prison: guilt. For the human conscience is a subtle but relentless taskmaster, one that binds even the strongest minds in invisible chains. Machiavelli warned that moral weakness could be exploited, and guilt, silent, unyielding, was the most potent weapon of all. He walked slowly, each step echoing against the cobblestones, recalling moments that should have brought pride or satisfaction. Instead, they now pressed upon him with the weight of judgment. Every kindness misinterpreted, every trust misplaced, every fleeting indulgence in desire now became evidence against him. Guilt, he realized, was not merely an internal voice, it was a companion that watched, weighed, and measured, ready to turn even virtue into torment. People rarely recognize the subtle ways guilt infiltrates their lives. It begins as a whisper, a fleeting unease, and grows into a symphony of self-recrimination. A man who sought to do good finds himself questioning motives, recalculating intentions, and fearing consequences. Machiavelli's insight was clear. Those who understand guilt wield it not only against themselves, but also against others. A carefully placed reminder of past failures, a suggestion of inadequacy, can destabilize the strongest alliances. He passed a shuttered window and glimpsed his reflection. The face staring back seemed familiar, yet strange, as if guilt had carved lines and shadows into it overnight. He felt the subtle tremor of fear mingled with regret, a dangerous combination. The mind, once sharp and decisive, falters under the weight of its own moral ledger. Every decision becomes tentative, every gesture cautious, until the chains of guilt dictate action more than reason or courage. In relationships, guilt is both weapon and prison. Friends exploit it to control, lovers manipulate it to dominate, and the self becomes the cruelest jailer of all. A single misstep, real or imagined, reverberates endlessly. The more one struggles against it, The tighter the chains grow, entwining body and soul in a relentless grip. In this darkness, even the purest intentions are transformed into vulnerabilities, and the lines between victim and perpetrator blur. He paused under the faint glow of a lamp, listening to the silence. Somewhere, another figure moved, unseen but present, aware of the subtle tremors guilt leaves in its wake. This awareness, he realized, was power, a silent, manipulative force capable of bending morality itself. The city around him, quiet and watchful, seemed to echo Machiavelli's lesson. Human weakness is rarely revealed in moments of strength, but always in the quiet chambers where conscience resides. As he moved forward, the chains of guilt grew heavier, but they also illuminated a truth. Every human being carries within themselves the capacity for both virtue and destruction. To navigate the world, one must recognize guilt not merely as punishment, but as a lens through which others' intentions, fears, and vulnerabilities can be understood, and, if necessary, manipulated. Ahead lay the next revelation. The illusion of control, the dangerous belief that one can navigate power and morality without consequence. The night had deepened into something almost tangible, a velvet darkness that seemed to press against every surface, testing patience and will. He walked along the silent avenues, the chains of guilt still whispering in his mind, shaping every step. The weight of moral consequence lingered, but another danger loomed, equally insidious, the illusion of control. For humans, Machiavelli observed, are rarely the masters of their own fates. They merely convince themselves that they are. Control is seductive. To manipulate events, to influence others, to feel the threads of power slip between fingers, it is intoxicating. And yet, in that very intoxication lies the seed of downfall. The more one believes they orchestrate outcomes, the more blind one becomes to the chaos already stirring beneath the surface. The city, in its quiet indifference, seemed to mock this illusion, each shadow hiding forces that could never be fully predicted or managed. He paused by an empty fountain, the water still, reflecting the pale moonlight. Here he could see the reflections of those around him, figures who appeared docile, manageable, even predictable. And yet, prediction is a fragile construct, always vulnerable to hidden desires, hidden fears, and hidden alliances. Every human interaction contains variables beyond observation, envy concealed behind smiles, loyalty purchased by self-interest, love manipulated as leverage. To believe one controls these forces is to invite disaster. Machiavelli's words came back with clarity. Those who seek control without understanding human nature court failure. Power is not a possession. It is a negotiation with chaos itself. A leader may command armies, a lover may sway hearts, a friend may counsel wisdom, but all are subject to the silent, unpredictable currents of fear, desire, and ambition. The illusion of control is the mask that conceals vulnerability from the world, while simultaneously blinding the wearer to their own fragility. He observed a man arguing with a stranger nearby, voices low but tense, gestures deliberate. Each sought dominance. Each believed in their ability to direct the outcome. Yet beneath the surface, unseen by either, an entirely different story unfolded. A third party, unnoticed, was manipulating events subtly, bending the actions of both toward a purpose neither could foresee. Control was never theirs. It was only the belief in it that gave them temporary comfort. The street stretched before him, empty yet charged with potential, and he realized the depth of the danger. The more one strives to master others, the more one becomes entangled in invisible webs, vulnerable to forces beyond comprehension. Every gesture, every decision, every attempt to impose order is countered by human nature itself, unpredictable, fickle, and relentless. And herein lies the cruelest truth. The illusion of control lulls men into a false security, leaving them exposed to the manipulations of those who understand its fragility. As he continued, the realization settled with oppressive clarity. Power is never absolute, morality is never untested, and control is always borrowed from forces too vast to measure. Ahead lay another revelation: hidden identities, double lives, and the dangerous secrets that thrive in the shadows. The city itself seemed to pulse with secrets, ready to expose every miscalculation, every misplaced trust, and every fragile belief in one's own dominion. And so he moved forward, lantern in hand, guided not by confidence, but by a cautious understanding. Control is a mirage, and those who seek it without wisdom will soon discover the cost of overestimating their mastery. The path ahead promised revelations that would pierce veils and expose truths long hidden, truths that would test every preconception and force a confrontation with the darkness within. The streets had grown quieter, yet the weight of unseen eyes pressed down like a tangible force. He understood now that control was only ever temporary, an illusion that dissolved when the hidden currents of human nature emerged. And these currents often flowed behind masks, faces that smiled, nodded, and spoke with sincerity, yet concealed intentions darker than the night itself. Every mask was a story, every gesture a careful deception. Machiavelli had long ago observed that men are seldom what they seem. The world rewards appearance, not substance, and those who master the art of disguise, social, emotional, moral, often hold the greatest power. Beneath each friendly glance or polite nod lies the possibility of betrayal, manipulation, or secret ambition. And those who fail to see beyond the surface walk blindly into traps of their own making. He paused near a corner, noticing a figure leaning against a lamppost. The man's face was calm, pleasant even, yet there was something in the eyes that spoke of unspoken schemes. They watched him for a moment, and in that silent exchange, a subtle truth revealed itself. People reveal what they intend others to see, never the entirety of themselves. The mask is both shield and weapon, and understanding it is essential for survival. In the quiet, he recalled encounters from the past, friends who whispered loyalty yet plotted behind closed doors, lovers who professed devotion while nurturing resentment, strangers whose kindness hid predatory calculation. Every mask he had encountered now seemed layered, each gesture deliberately chosen, each word a piece of a puzzle designed to conceal far more than it revealed. Understanding the mask was not enough. One must also anticipate the actions of the face behind it and the motives driving it. The streetlights flickered, shadows dancing across brick walls, creating the illusion of movement where there was none. He realized then that every mask carries a story of survival, ambition, and fear. Some shields protect the innocent, others manipulate the gullible, and some are forged in obsession, ready to ensnare anyone who looks too closely. To navigate the world effectively, one must recognize not only the mask, but also the fragile human truths that lie beneath: desire, fear, envy, and the relentless pursuit of self-interest. As he moved further into the alley, another figure emerged, unfamiliar, yet carrying the unmistakable aura of hidden intent. Each step forward became a negotiation with deception itself, a careful reading of expressions and silences, a silent chess match where a single miscalculation could prove catastrophic. And in the distance, he glimpsed the faintest hint of yet another layer, a revelation waiting to pierce the veil. The silent manipulations, the half-truths, the dangerous duplicity that lies behind even the most ordinary of faces. It was here, amidst these quiet streets, that he understood the ultimate danger. Humans are not merely unpredictable. They are deliberately inscrutable, constantly curating the versions of themselves they allow the world to see. And within these faces behind masks, the next revelation awaited: Fear, the most primal and persuasive of all human weapons, ready to exploit every misjudgment, every hesitation, every illusion of safety. The night had thickened into a heavy, almost suffocating darkness. Every sound seemed amplified. The distant creak of a door, the soft shuffle of a footstep, the whispered sigh of the wind through narrow streets. Fear, he realized, thrives not in the loud and obvious, but in these subtle spaces where the mind fills silence with imagined terrors. Machiavelli had understood the power of fear, not just as punishment, but as a tool, a lens through which people's choices and weaknesses could be revealed and exploited. He moved cautiously, lantern in hand, aware that those who walk confidently in the shadows are often the first to fall. Fear sharpens perception and dulls reason simultaneously. It makes the body hyper-aware, the mind restless, and the heart vulnerable. Even the smallest gesture, a sudden movement, an unfamiliar shadow can trigger it, creating ripples that spread far beyond the immediate moment. And in this heightened state, morality, virtue, and restraint are easily overridden. He felt it in himself first, a tightness in the chest, a subtle hesitation in his step. Fear is both a mirror and a trap. It reflects internal weaknesses while simultaneously manipulating actions. Those who understand this can bend others without striking a single blow. A whispered rumor, a carefully timed glance, or the suggestion of imminent danger can force compliance, allegiance, or even betrayal. The edge of fear is where human nature is stripped bare, leaving raw instinct in place of reasoned thought. A figure appeared ahead, just at the fringe of lantern light, their presence both visible and obscured. The eyes glimmered, calculating. A simple glance held the weight of menace, a silent reminder that unseen forces were constantly at work. Trust, he realized, is rarely given freely in such moments. It is coerced, extracted, and manipulated by those who wield fear as deftly as a blade. Every decision becomes a gamble, every word a potential misstep with consequences that could escalate in ways no one can predict. Fear is not always immediate. Sometimes it waits, patient, lurking behind false security. It builds slowly, a subtle pressure on the psyche until even the most confident feel their foundation crumble. And the cruelest truth of all, those who are most aware of fear can use it to dominate those who are not. The human mind, so eager to cling to hope, can be persuaded into surrendering reason, virtue, and even loyalty, all without the need for overt force. He paused on a narrow bridge, water below reflecting fragmented moonlight. The city seemed to hold its breath, as if aware that its secrets, its obsessions, betrayals, and hidden faces could only be fully revealed when fear takes hold. It was here, on this fragile edge, that he understood the delicate balance between control and surrender, courage and submission, knowledge and terror. And as he moved forward into the deeper shadows, the realization settled like ice in his veins. Fear is not merely a reaction, it is a weapon, a prism through which human nature is most clearly observed. Beyond this edge lay the next revelation, one that would force reflection upon oneself, the dark mirror of human morality and the unsettling truth that even the observer can become prey to the very forces they study. He paused at the edge of a deserted square, the shadows stretching long and distorted beneath the pale glow of a flickering lantern. In the stillness, he saw himself reflected in a puddle, the distorted ripples twisting his features into something unfamiliar. The reflection, he realized, was more than mere water. It was a mirror to the human soul, a dark surface revealing hidden truths, suppressed desires, and the dangerous potential lurking within. Fear had sharpened his senses, but now reflection demanded confrontation. The self is the most treacherous of adversaries. Machiavelli had long warned that men are seldom guided solely by principle. They are often slaves to ambition, desire, and self-interest. Observing others exposes weakness, yes, but confronting one's own nature is infinitely more perilous. In this mirror, he saw every act of kindness that had been exploited, every gesture of trust that had been manipulated, and every moral compromise that had been justified in the name of survival. The shadows within himself were as deep and unpredictable as those of the world around him. The reflection shifted with every step, reminding him that identity is fluid, layered, and often contradictory. Beneath the veneer of virtue lies the potential for darkness, and beneath the darkness lies a kernel of self-deception. A man who believes in his own control over circumstances is often blind to the manipulation he exerts unconsciously, the subtle coercion of fear, guilt, or desire that shapes the behavior of others. And conversely, he may underestimate the ways in which others' manipulations shape him. He knelt beside the puddle, fingers brushing the water, rippling the reflection into chaos. The image fractured, and with it came a terrifying clarity. Morality is not absolute, and virtue is not immutable. Every act, every choice, every interaction leaves traces, some visible, some hidden, that define the balance between influence and exploitation. The self, once assumed to be sovereign, is subject to the same forces that govern others: fear, obsession, guilt, and the relentless pull of desire. The shadows around him deepened, and he noticed figures moving in the distance, their intentions concealed yet palpable. He realized that the true danger is not always external. The observer, the analyst, the one who scrutinizes others' motives, can become ensnared in the same patterns of manipulation he studies. The mirror reflects both predator and prey, and the line separating the two is often invisible until it is too late. Rising, he cast one last glance into the dark surface. The reflection had vanished, leaving only the faint ripple of disturbed water, but the knowledge remained. The self is a landscape as perilous as the streets, alleys, and hidden corners he had traversed. To understand human nature fully, one must confront this internal darkness and acknowledge the capacity for corruption, for obsession, for fear, and for exploitation that resides within. Ahead lay the next revelation: love, desire, and attachment, forces that promise fulfillment yet conceal danger, ready to ensnare even the most vigilant in their silent, seductive web. The moon hung low, casting pale light across the deserted square, illuminating corners that concealed whispers, secrets, and the faint traces of human desire. He had confronted fear, betrayal, and the shadow of his own conscience. But now another danger emerged: love. Not the tender, nurturing love of stories or songs, but love as a trap, an instrument as precise and merciless as any dagger. Machiavelli had long understood that attachment can be as dangerous as ambition, and few recognize the subtle ways affection ensnares and corrupts. Love begins with fascination. A glance lingers, a word resonates, a presence becomes a compass for thought. At first it seems benign, even uplifting. Yet obsession and vulnerability quietly follow, threading their tendrils into every decision, every action, every plan. Those who seek to manipulate human behavior know that attachment is one of the most reliable levers. It bends reason, distorts judgment, and demands compliance without force. He walked along the cobblestones, recalling encounters where kindness and affection had been misread or exploited. A friend's loyalty becomes indebtedness, a lover's devotion becomes leverage, and every gesture of care carries the potential for subtle coercion. Love, he realized, is never neutral. It is always a tool, a channel through which desires, fears, and ambitions are conveyed and sometimes weaponized. The more intensely one feels, the more vulnerable one becomes. In the shadows, he noticed a figure waiting, silent, patient. The eyes held warmth, but also calculation. Affection, he understood, is a currency. Those who wield it carefully can extract obedience, trust, or information without ever raising a hand. The trap is not in overt coercion, it is in expectation, in longing, in the desire to please or protect the object of affection. Every act of love becomes a thread in an invisible web, and the unwary may find themselves caught before realizing they were ensnared. Machiavelli's warning resonated. Emotions are not merely personal, they are instruments of influence. The mind, under the weight of desire, often abandons caution, overlooks danger, and misjudges intentions. Even the most rational individual can be manipulated through attachment, and in this manipulation, love ceases to be a gift. It becomes a weapon. The trap lies not in the affection itself, but in the human tendency to let desire override prudence. He paused beneath a crumbling archway, shadows curling around him like smoke. The truth settled with chilling clarity. To love is to risk compromise. To care is to expose vulnerability. Every bond carries potential for exploitation. Every affection conceals the possibility of betrayal. And yet, the human heart is incapable of resisting, drawn relentlessly toward attachment even when it endangers self-preservation. Ahead, he sensed the culmination of all these lessons, the ultimate revelation about human nature. Betrayal, fear, obsession, guilt, and love converge to reveal a final, haunting truth. Morality, virtue, and kindness are never without consequence. The next step would expose the last forbidden secret, the hidden cost of understanding human behavior in its entirety, the truth that lingers at the edge of comprehension and refuses to be forgotten. The night had reached its deepest hour, the city swallowed by shadows that seemed almost sentient, aware of the secrets they harbored. Every lesson, every danger he had encountered, the mask of virtue, whispered betrayals, the poison of obsession, chains of guilt, the illusion of control, hidden faces, fear, self-reflection, and the treacherous pull of love converged now into a singular, unavoidable revelation. The forbidden truth revealed itself not with ceremony, but with quiet inevitability. Human nature, in all its complexity, is far more dangerous than any external threat. He paused at the center of a deserted courtyard, lantern flickering, the silence almost unbearable. Machiavelli's wisdom crystallized before him. No act of goodness is without consequence, no virtue immune to exploitation. Every attempt to impose morality on the world, to trust blindly, to love without caution, carries a hidden cost. The very traits that elevate a person above others, kindness, loyalty, compassion, can be wielded against them, transformed into tools of manipulation by those who understand the darker facets of the human mind. The air seemed to thicken, the shadows pressing closer, as if the city itself bore witness to the revelation. Human beings, he understood, are governed not solely by reason, but by desire, fear, guilt, and the relentless pursuit of self-interest. Acts of trust invite betrayal. Moments of attachment invite manipulation. Even self-awareness can become a weapon in the hands of those who understand the fragility of perception. To navigate this world is to recognize that morality is a lens, not a shield, and that understanding others' weakness is often the only way to survive. He remembered the faces he had encountered. Friends, lovers, strangers, all masks layered upon masks, hiding intentions and ambitions beneath smiles and gestures. He recalled the weight of obsession, the subtle hand of guilt guiding decisions, and the seductive mirage of control. And then, the most insidious lesson, even the observer, the analyst, the one who scrutinizes human nature for hidden truths, is not immune. Reflection alone does not protect. Knowledge alone does not save. Awareness exposes vulnerability as much as it grants insight. In the distance, a figure emerged from the shadows, neither friend nor enemy, but a representation of the forces he had observed. the embodiment of manipulation, desire, and fear intertwined. There was no dialogue, no confrontation. The presence alone was enough to remind him that the world is an intricate web, and every step, every choice, every emotion is subject to unseen influence. Goodness is not merely tested by circumstance. It is dissected by human nature itself, and only those who wield awareness with precision can hope to survive its trials. He took a deep breath, the cold night air filling his lungs, and finally grasped the cruel clarity of it all. The forbidden truth is not a secret one can act upon or fully control. It is a reality to acknowledge, a caution to carry, and a weight to bear. Every relationship, every act, every intention is entangled in the unseen machinery of desire, fear, and ambition. To live ethically, to act kindly, to love sincerely, is to accept vulnerability. To know this is to know danger, and to ignore it is to invite ruin. The night stretched onward, empty yet alive, and in that stillness he understood the ultimate lesson. Virtue carries a price, trust is a peril, and human nature is a labyrinth of shadows that will never fully be illuminated. Those who learn the forbidden truth walk with knowledge too heavy for comfort, aware that every kindness, every attachment, every moral choice has consequences far beyond the immediate. And as he vanished into the darkness, leaving the courtyard behind, the lingering thought remained. To understand the depths of human behavior is to glimpse a danger that cannot be unseen, a haunting awareness that forever changes the way one perceives the world and oneself.